iRacing have just released an announcement video revealing their new upgraded debris and particle system. And I have to say, I absolutely love this sort of thing in video games and simulators. And I'm going to explain why this seemingly small feature and addition is actually a huge bursting bonanza of a boost for immersion, and how it actually affects gameplay. Even though it's a subtle thing, it can actually quite drastically affect gameplay. So, without further ado, make yourselves a cup of tea. Thank you for subscribing so you can unsubscribe, and appreciate those of you that have clicked the like button 6 times. On with the video. So I highly recommend you watch the video. It shows iRacing developers trying their best to race in the top split and trying their best to master the iRacing tyre model. But as a result of that, you get to see the new debris system where you have cars being able to drag sand, dust, gravel, grass onto the racetrack, and then having that gravel, dust, sand displayed onto the racetrack, having it stay there, and then having other vehicles be able to drive through it and drag bits of that debris and particles along with them in a surprisingly detailed way, and in a way that you can see the particles having a bit of physics and stuff on them. It looks absolutely superb. Also, they have the ability for the tyres to pick up the debris, the textures of the tyres to change with that, stuff like marbles being picked up, and then they also have it so that different weather conditions and conditions of the tyre and track and everything affect how much these things are picked up and what goes on. Absolutely ridiculous attention to detail. Someone's probably been hired at iRacing and they're like, oh god, my entire job is particles. Why is this my life? I wish I was not a programmer. But they've done a fantastic job, so they shouldn't feel too bad, and to console them, they can just remind themselves that at least they're not a sim racing YouTuber, which is the worst thing anyone could possibly be on Earth. Nevertheless, what's interesting is how this affects gameplay, how this affects immersion, and finally, I can talk about Half-Life 2 in the context of sim racing. So one of the great things that Half-Life 2 introduced, or did particularly well, is that every single surface type and texture type in that game also had corresponding sound effects, decals, so that's a texture that's put on the wall after you shoot it or interact with it, and particle effects that are ejected off the walls depending on what the wall's made of. Now these would seem like really small things, but what they end up doing is making the surfaces seem like real surfaces. When you shoot sand, sand comes back. When you shoot metal, it sparks, it does a metallic thing. And when you shoot concrete, it does the concretey thing. As a Brit, obviously I have a lot of experience of shooting different surfaces. Every Thursday in Lidl's, that's what I spend my time doing. It's actually a surprisingly quick way to get your shopping done, because no one stops you from taking everything from the middle aisle. Really quite simple stuff on the grand scheme of things, but what they do is they imply that the object you've shot is actually that real object. If you shoot it and concrete comes out and it makes a concrete sound, you're like, oh, it's concrete. It isn't in reality, it's just a polygon with a texture on it. If you shoot metal and it makes a metal sound, oh, it's different, and oh, it's obviously metal. And the player just starts applying what they've learnt in reality and the complexity of reality to what is a very simple version of it in a video game, which just massively magnifies immersion. It's kind of like a magic trick of games. It's implying more than is actually there by doing quite a simple thing. Also, I think one of the really compelling game mechanics, or one of the things that people just really like in life, is the aspect of cause and effect, and specifically the player doing something which then produces an effect. If you're playing a game and you shoot a wall and nothing really happens, that's not really much of an effect, is it? Whereas if you shoot a wall, something happens from it, sound effect, particles, maybe the wall falls down. Next battlefield, guys, I'm telling you. But the more that happens from what you do, the more rich, the more involving, the more entertaining in many ways a game, a piece of interactive software, or just doing things in reality normally are. So that's a bit of the history there of where this kind of thing sort of started, and how that applies to driving simulators is pretty similar in many ways, in that the more you have these kind of particle effects, and the more dynamic and the more that they actually do stuff in the video game, the more that's going on to convince you that you're not driving a car over a textured polygon, but you are actually in a world with all these like gravel particles and all this stuff going on, and there's more that your brain has to process, and you're affecting it and other people are affecting it, so it's more real. It's all part of the magic trick of immersion and convincing people that they're actually driving a race car, when in reality they're not. They're overweight, sat in a driving simulator, having wasted too much money to fiddle with knobs. That's the reality, but you've got to fool them into thinking that's not the reality. And I definitely feel like this update to iRacing will really, really help in doing that. And I have to give credit to iRacing as well, that they've done stuff like other things like this before, such as the when you're driving behind another car and a bit of rubber or something's flicked up off their car and it hits your windshield. That's obviously all fake. I hate to break this to you guys, those of you that have been really immersed and don't realise you're playing a game. It's obviously all fake. It's just a texture or particle, and then a sound effect, and then the texture that's put on your screen. But it implies that you've got an atmosphere. It implies that the tyres are actually interacting with the road surface. It implies that the tyres are actually losing rubber and breaking down. It implies a thickness to the atmosphere. It implies that the speed, the time at which the rubber took to get from the tyre to your visor. It implies that you actually are wearing a visor. It implies that your car's solid. So just from a really small thing, it has a huge knock-on immersive effect, which is the sort of thing I really love about video games. Simple stuff that has a big effect. Absolutely amazing. Now, what's really interesting as well is not just the immersion and the visual component of it, but also how it actually affects the gameplay and the actual function of racing. So, obviously, if you see smoke in the distance, well, someone's probably had a bit of a spin in an accident. And then well, I can prepare myself for that. I can go, well, if there's been an accident, these people will bunch up. I can put myself in a better position. Maybe I'll separate myself from the car in front of me. Maybe I'll make sure I'm on the inside of a corner. Maybe I'll turn the voice chat up. Definitely turn the voice chat up. That's just something like smoke. But if you've got things like debris on the track, well, now you know that the car in front, that's still in front of you, but there's debris on the track, well, their tyres are going to be a bit sloppier for a bit. It's a visual reminder, it's a history of what's occurred to give you more information and more intelligence, or more intel. That's what intelligence means. Didn't need to say that. It lets you put a bigger picture together using the intel as to what's going on with other vehicles. Also, if you have more dynamic track surfaces, such as iRacing does with a very dynamic wet surface, maybe it could be a little bit better, but moving forwards as well as things develop more, if you have a more dynamic track, you have to ask yourself the question, oh, there's a bit of gravel there because someone went off the road. Why did they go off the road? Did the track have lower grip there? Were their tyres colder because they've just come out of the pits in some other phase? Or is there something actually on the track there? Was there oil on the track there? What caused the gravel to be there? It basically produces a narrative for you to then piece together, and a puzzle game for you to ultimately ignore it in the moment and probably still crash anyway. And then, of course, you're probably asking yourself, how can you use these things to your advantage? And Machiavellian muscle would say, if you were really far ahead, it could be quite funny to put grass or gravel onto a braking part of a track, kind of like you would deploy an oil slick in Mario Kart. Of course, I wouldn't do that, and I don't think anyone else would do that, because they would be banned by iRacing's very well moderated servers. But yeah, no, it just opens up opportunities, options, and just makes things more interesting. And I think from a artistic software point of view, I think that all that kind of stuff is absolutely fantastic. So I could talk about this kind of thing forever. There's so many other aspects to this as well, but I don't want to bore you all to death, guys. I don't think everybody is as passionate about rather niche components of games design as I am. But we'll do more videos. We'll save it for another video for those of you that do happen to have drunk too much tea and have calcified your brains. Great job by iRacing. Looking forward to trying it out myself. I'm a little bit concerned about frame rates. I struggle to get a perfect 120 Hz on all the tracks in iRacing. I think there's lots of things with optimization. Obviously, iRacing is looking to move to a new game engine and improve that kind of stuff. So we'll see how that pans out in the future. But I'm looking forward to this sort of thing. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be interesting. That is it for this video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Appreciate the interesting comments. Couldn't care less about the boring ones. Click the like button if you haven't already. Join our Patreon if you want to support us or become a member. We're also on Twitch. I'm shilling myself. There's nothing. That's it. What a terrible end of the video. Happy tea drinking, guys. Take care. Thanks for watching and goodbye.